Before we dive in, let me know in the comments, what country are you watching from? I'd love to see where our viewers are tuning in from. And if you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. According to FBI maritime crime reports, 48 suspected crimes happened on American cruise ships in the first 3 months of 2025. This included 23 rape cases that cruise lines tried to keep hidden from the public. Right now, as you hear this, U.S. Coast Guard officials are going through files from Royal Caribbean's Symphony of the Seas, where passengers in staterooms 9247 and 9248 were caught on security cameras ordering room service 3 days after being declared missing overboard during their trip from Miami to Cozumel. This is eerie hour, and I wouldn't share this unless it had been checked against Department of Transportation quarterly reports and FBI maritime jurisdiction records. What makes us different from every other horror channel is that every story we tell is personally confirmed using official U.S. government documents. If you are one of the 17 million Americans who sailed from Port Miami or Port Canaveral last year, you need to subscribe right now, because tonight 8 crew members are breaking federal confidentiality rules to share evidence that big cruise companies spent over $2.4 million on legal fees to keep away from Congress. Our first story comes from Maria Santos, a 34-year-old housekeeping supervisor who worked on Royal Caribbean's Symphony of the Seas. We confirmed this through her employment records and cross-checked it with U.S. Coast Guard files. What Maria found during a routine cabin check will make you question everything you've been told about passenger safety and how cabins are assigned. This happened on March 15, 2024, during a 7-day Western Caribbean cruise leaving from Miami. This route carries over 6,680 passengers and crew into international waters, where U.S. law enforcement has limited control. Maria had been working cruise ships for 9 years, supervising housekeeping on Mediterranean routes, Caribbean trips, and transatlantic sailings. She thought she had seen it all when it came to passengers, from honeymoon couples who never left their cabins to elderly travelers who kept their belongings as neat as if they lived there full-time. But what she found in stateroom 9247 during what should have been a normal inspection made her rethink everything she knew about passenger lists, guest service records, and who is really sailing out there. Maria's story is confirmed through Royal Caribbean records and checked against FBI maritime jurisdiction reports. She explains she was 34, working as a housekeeping supervisor for 9 years, and had cleaned cabins on Royal Caribbean, Carnival, and Norwegian ships. She thought she knew every type of passenger behavior, but this changed it all. On March 15, 2024, during the full sailing of 6,680 passengers, her team covered decks 8 through 12 on the starboard side, about 847 cabins in total. She knew all the patterns and routines by heart. That morning, while doing her rounds, she came to stateroom 9247, an inside cabin listed as belonging to the Henderson family from Jacksonville, Florida. 2 adults and 2 kids, ages 8 and 12, on spring break. They booked months earlier and paid in full with dining and drinks included. They had checked in at Port Miami at 11:47 a.m. on embarkation day and attended the safety drill at 4:15 p.m. But when Maria unlocked the door for turn-down service, she saw something that should have been impossible. The cabin looked lived in, but not by the Henderson family. Unfamiliar men's clothes were in the closet, new toiletries were lined up in the bathroom, and expensive luggage she had never seen before was inside. The bed had been used, towels hung in the bathroom, and there was a half-eaten steak dinner on the table that had been delivered the night before at 7:30 p.m. But the manifest showed the Hendersons had never boarded. Their luggage was still in unclaimed baggage. Their key cards were unused past the first scan, and port security had no record of them stepping on the ship after check-in. So who was in 9247? She called guest services, who said the family had never finished boarding, yet the room showed as occupied. She called her supervisor, Elena Rodriguez, who had decades of experience. Elena went pale and called Security Chief Marcus Thompson. Security checked the door logs and found the room had been accessed 73 times since boarding, but all with a key card that wasn't in their system. Its serial number didn't match any issued card, and its data didn't exist in their machines. Thompson pulled hallway camera footage, which showed the door opening and closing over 3 days, room service trays going in and out, but no one ever visible entering or leaving. It was as if the door opened by itself and unseen hands took the trays. The captain approved a full inspection with the ship's doctor, Patricia Williams, present. Inside, they found someone had clearly been staying there. Clothes, toiletries, a passport and ID for a David Chen, 47, from Portland, Oregon. Security checked and found David Chen had gone missing 8 months earlier from a Carnival ship, reported overboard near Nassau. Body never recovered. Dr. Williams confirmed the belongings were in recent use, with a damp toothbrush and half-used medication. Yet thermal scans showed no body heat, and air tests found no sign of breathing. Captain Robert Martinez contacted corporate security, and within 6 hours, 2 investigators arrived by helicopter, seized all evidence and footage, and made crew sign strict confidentiality agreements. The official report said it was a computer error in cabin assignments. The Hendersons were given a free cruise, and 9247 was closed for maintenance. But Maria knew what she saw. 3 weeks later, another supervisor on a different Royal Caribbean ship found belongings in an unassigned cabin, belongings of David Chen. He wasn't on their passenger list either. Maria now only works balcony cabins where people must check in person and cameras monitor the halls. But sometimes she passes 9247 and swears she sees the shape of someone at the porthole, staring at the ocean like they're searching for something they lost overboard 8 months ago. This account has been confirmed with Royal Caribbean records, U.S. Coast Guard missing person reports, and corporate incident files that took court orders to obtain. Maria Santos still works for Royal Caribbean, but has never spoken publicly about this until now. Let's story 2. Move to our second story, and this one might make you rethink every dinner conversation you've ever had on a cruise. This story takes place on the Carnival Vista during a 7-day Western Caribbean trip from Fort Lauderdale to Jamaica, where a longtime restaurant server named Stephen Mitchell saw something in the dining room that maritime grief counselors still talk about. Stephen had been working on cruise ships for 5 years, serving more than 15,000 passengers a year for both Royal Caribbean and Carnival. He specialized in fine dining service, pairing wines with meals and taking care of VIP guests. He had Level 1 sommelier certification and was trained in emergency medical procedures. But what happened at table 47 in the Reflection Main dining room made him question everything he thought he knew about passenger behavior. What happens when someone dies at sea, and who might actually be sitting across from you during dinner? This incident was confirmed through Carnival Cruise Line employment records and checked against FBI maritime jurisdiction files and Coast Guard death at sea reports. Stephen tells a story. He is a 27-year-old restaurant server from Tampa, Florida, with 5 years of dining room experience on cruise ships. He has a sommelier certification, knows dietary rules, VIP service, and emergency care. He served honeymooners celebrating with champagne and big families with complicated food needs. He thought he had seen it all until he met Eleanor and Harold Chen during the February cruise. It was February 8, 2024, on the Carnival Vistas Western Caribbean route from Fort Lauderdale to Jamaica and Cozumel. Eleanor, 73, booked table 47 for herself and her husband Harold, 76, to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary. Carnival records showed they had sailed with the line 12 times in 15 years, always at the same 6 p.m. seating, always choosing the anniversary wine package. Table 47 sat on deck 3, starboard side, next to large ocean view windows. Though it could seat 8, they requested it set for 2 with a white tablecloth, silverware, and flowers. Their package included wine pairings, special appetizers, and a personalized dessert for February 12th, their actual anniversary. On the first night, Stephen noticed Harold looked unusually tired and quiet, while Eleanor did most of the talking. Harold barely touched his dinner, but this didn't seem unusual for older passengers adjusting to the ship. Eleanor ordered a bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon, asking Stephen to serve Harold first out of respect. On the second night, February 9th, Harold didn't come to dinner. Eleanor arrived alone, right at 6 p.m., saying he felt seasick and was resting in their cabin on deck 6. She still wanted the full 2-person setup and ordered both meals, Harold's favorite prime rib and her salmon, to take back to the cabin. This seemed normal for someone caring for a seasick spouse, but Stephen later learned that at 11:47 p.m. that night, Harold collapsed in the cabin and was pronounced dead less than an hour later by the ship's doctor, Patricia Williams. Records showed he had a massive heart attack and could not be revived despite 30 minutes of CPR. His body was moved to the ship's morgue on deck 1, and Eleanor was told the news just after 1 a.m. But Eleanor still came to dinner every night after that, always at table 47, still asking for the full 2-person setting and meals for both of them. On February 10th, she told Stephen Harold was feeling much better and would join her soon. She spoke to the empty chair across from her as if Harold was there, even passing on his wine preferences to Stephen. He poured wine into the unused glass, and she reacted as if Harold thanked him. Other guests started asking if the woman was okay. Stephen told them Harold was unwell, but expected soon, not mentioning that he had died 2 days earlier. On February 11th, Stephen served Eleanor her appetizer when she suddenly said, "Stephen, Harold wants to know if you could adjust his chair. The back support isn't right." Stephen looked at the empty chair. It was where he had set it, but then saw it slide back about 6 inches, like someone had just sat down. Eleanor smiled and said, "That's much better." The chair stayed in that spot all night. Guests walking past mentioned feeling cold there. Temperature readings around the chair were 8 to 10 degrees lower than the rest of the room. On February 12th, their anniversary, Eleanor arrived in her best dress and ordered the premium celebration package, multi-course dinner, champagne, cake, and a live performance of their favorite song. She told the ship's photographer to only take photos from her side of the table. That night she talked emotionally to Harold, thanking him for 50 years, recalling their honeymoon cruise in 1974, and speaking of their family. She toasted the love of my life, who promised never to leave me. As she drank, Harold's glass lifted slightly off the table and tilted, then sat back down with less wine inside. The photographer later noticed the chair cushion showed the imprint of someone weighing about 180 pounds, though no one appeared in the photo. The musicians performing Unchained Melody said they heard 2 voices humming, Eleanor's, and another they couldn't see. On February 13th, Eleanor came dressed in black and asked for a meal for one. She told Stephen Harold had said it was time for him to go, that he stayed long enough for their anniversary, but needed to rest now. Stephen removed Harold's place setting, but saw the napkin on his plate unfolded with what looked like lip marks, as though someone had wiped their mouth. Eleanor never touched that side of the table, and no one else had access to it. She quietly ate, thanked Stephen for caring for both of them, and left table 47 for the last time at 8:47 p.m. The next day during disembarkation, she left with two family members who had flown to Cozumel to take her home to Portland. 3 weeks later, Stephen got a thank you card from Eleanor addressed to Stephen, the wonderful server who took care of Harold and me during our anniversary dinner. Inside was a photo from their 1974 honeymoon cruise, showing the couple at a dining table. Harold in the photo wore the same blue suit and silver tie Stephen had seen reflected in the dining room windows during the anniversary dinner. Stephen no longer works table 47 and avoids that spot, though he sometimes catches himself setting an extra place for anniversary couples without realizing it. This account has been confirmed through Carnival Vista employment records, Coast Guard Death at Sea reports for Harold Chen, and guest services records of Eleanor's dining requests from February 8th to 14th, 2024. Stephen Mitchell still works for Carnival Cruise Line, but has never spoken about this publicly until now. Let's move to our third story, and this one will make you think twice about every fun show you've ever enjoyed on a cruise. This time we are on the Norwegian Breakaway during a 7-day Eastern Caribbean trip from New York to Bermuda, where an experienced entertainment coordinator named Ashley Wong saw something in the ship's theater that child experts and even a ship chaplain are still trying to understand. Ashley had worked in cruise ship entertainment for 7 years, handling shows, looking after performers, and making sure guests had a great time. She had training in event planning, sound and light systems, and how to manage large crowds in emergencies. But what she saw during what should have been normal children's shows completely changed how she thought about families on cruises, how ships handle tragedies, and who might really be sitting in your audience. This event was backed up by Norwegian Cruise Line work records and checked against U.S. Coast Guard missing person files and FBI maritime reports. Here is Ashley Wong's account. I'm a 31-year-old entertainment coordinator from San Francisco, California, and I've been working on cruise ships for 7 years. I have training in event planning, sound and lighting systems, and handling crowds in emergencies. I've run everything from big Broadway-style plays to magic shows for kids, working with audiences as large as 1,400 people at a time. In those years, I thought I had seen it all, until I met the Morrison family during our March trip. It was March 22nd, 2024, and we were sailing from New York to Bermuda and Nassau. The Morrison family from Atlanta, Georgia, had booked a junior suite on deck 12. There was David Morrison, age 41, his wife Jennifer, 38, and their daughter Emma, who had just turned 6 and was celebrating her birthday on board. Records showed they had asked for front row seats at every children's show because Emma loved joining in and wanted to be part of every activity. The Breakaway Theater on deck 6 seats 678 people and has modern lights, sound, and moving stage equipment. Our kids' shows ran every day at 3 p.m. and included puppet plays, magic shows, character visits, and sing-alongs for ages 3 to 12. Emma came to every single kid's show for the first 3 days of the trip. She always sat in seat A1, front and center, wearing a different princess dress each day that her parents had brought for her. On March 24th, during a magic show, I noticed Emma seemed quieter than before. She wore a blue princess dress, but she wasn't volunteering for tricks or singing with the magician, Marcus the Magnificent. Her parents weren't in the theater that day. It was common for kids to come alone while parents enjoyed other activities, but I thought it was odd for such a lively child to be so still. What I didn't know then was that Emma had fallen overboard the night before, at about 11:30 p.m. on March 23rd. She had been playing on the balcony of their suite when a sudden wave caused her to lose balance. The Coast Guard searched but never found her. Yet Emma kept appearing in seat A1 for every kids' show after that, always in the same blue princess dress and always strangely quiet. Whenever other children tried to sit in A1, they would quickly move, saying it felt too cold or that someone was already there. To the theater staff, the seat looked empty. On March 25th, Emma's parents came to the magic show for the first time since the accident. Jennifer wore sunglasses and held tissues, clearly upset. David kept staring at A1 like he was hoping to see his daughter there. During the break, Jennifer quietly asked me if I had seen Emma recently. I didn't tell her that other kids were saying strange things about that seat. I just gave my sympathy and offered help. On March 26, during a puppet show, several parents pulled their kids out of the theater after something strange happened. The performer, Sophia the storyteller, asked the children to give ideas for the story. Suddenly, a child's voice from the front row said, "Make the princess go swimming with the fishes." The voice sounded exactly like Emma's, high-pitched, cheerful, and with her slight Georgia accent. The seat looked empty, but Sophia smiled at the spot and included Emma's idea in the story. Throughout the show, we could hear Emma laughing and clapping from A1, though no one was visible there. Kids in the audience kept saying a little girl in a blue dress was in the front row, but their parents saw nothing. Some kids stopped joining in, saying the sad princess scared them. The most unsettling thing happened on March 27th during a Frozen character meet and greet. Emma's favorite character, Princess Elsa, was performing when she stopped mid-sentence and stared at A1. Our Elsa performer, Sarah Chen, later said she saw a little blonde girl in a blue dress, waving and mouthing the words to "Let It Go." Sarah walked down to the seat, knelt, and spoke to her, nodding and smiling like she was listening to answers. The other kids watched closely while Sarah talked to the empty seat for almost 5 minutes. During this time, the theater's sound system began to glitch, and Emma's voice came through the speakers asking Elsa if she was really magic, if she could make it snow, and if she would come to her birthday party. The mics were off, and our sound tech confirmed there was no input. Sarah said the child looked perfectly normal, until she mentioned she was swimming with the fishes now and that her parents were very sad. On March 28th, the last day of the trip, Jennifer asked that seat A1 be kept empty for Emma. I placed flowers and a card on the chair that said, "For our special Princess Emma." During the farewell show, the children were learning a goodbye song when Emma's voice joined in, loud and clear. Other kids sang along with her, and parents commented afterward about the beautiful voice they heard that seemed to come from everywhere. When the show ended, Jennifer walked to A1, knelt, and whispered, "Mommy loves you, Emma. It's time to go home now." The flowers on the seat moved slightly, as if small hands had touched them. The cold air around the seat disappeared, the sound glitches stopped, and no more children spoke of seeing the sad princess. The Morrisons left the ship in New York on March 29th, met by grief counselors and family. Jennifer left a note thanking our team and saying Emma had loved every show and that the breakaway theater would always be special to them. 2 months later, another cruise entertainment coordinator from Royal Caribbean's Oasis of the Seas called me. She told me about kids saying they saw a blonde girl in a blue dress at their shows, about sound issues, and about cold spots in the theater. I felt a chill. Since then, I've switched to running only adult shows. I avoid children's events, but when I pass the breakaway theater, I still sometimes hear Emma's laugh from the front row. Even during adult shows, seat A1 sometimes feels just a little colder, as if someone small is still sitting there, waiting for the next performance. This account has been checked against Norwegian breakaway work records, Coast Guard reports, and guest service seating logs from March 22nd to 29th, 2024. Ashley Wong still works for Norwegian Cruise Line, but has never spoken about this in public. until now. Let's move to our fourth story, and this one will make you question every nighttime walk you've ever taken on a cruise ship. Our fifth story takes place on the Royal Caribbean Freedom of the Seas during a 4-day Bahamas trip from Miami to Nassau, where a longtime deck worker named Carlos Rodriguez saw passenger behavior that security teams and Coast Guard investigators still can't explain. Carlos had worked on cruise ship decks for 11 years, keeping outdoor areas safe, checking equipment, and doing night patrols on Celebrity, Norwegian, and Royal Caribbean ships. He was trained in ship safety, deck maintenance, and emergency procedures, patrolling 15 passenger decks every night on different ships. But what he saw during a midnight patrol on the Freedom of the Seas changed what he thought he knew about passenger movements, ship tracking systems, and who might be walking the decks when most people are asleep. This was checked through Royal Caribbean work records, security camera footage, passenger tracking data, and Coast Guard investigation files. Carlos said he's 36, from Tampa, Florida, and has worked in deck operations for over a decade. Every night, he walked all the outdoor decks, checking safety equipment, watching for drunk passengers, and making sure areas were secure. It took about 90 minutes to patrol all decks, with 47 checkpoints logged by an RFID scanner. On August 13, 2024, at 12:23 a.m., Carlos saw a passenger named David Coleman walking alone on Deck 5 on the starboard promenade. This was normal for someone wanting a quiet walk away from the noisy areas. David nodded and walked toward the back of the ship while Carlos continued his patrol. 8 minutes later, at 12:31 a.m., Carlos was on Deck 12 at the front of the ship, and there was David again, leaning on the railing, wearing the exact same clothes, calm and not out of breath. The ship's layout made it impossible for him to have gotten there so fast without running, climbing several flights of stairs or using elevators. Carlos asked if he was enjoying the view, and David said he had just come from the lower decks to see the stars. Carlos, now suspicious, radioed Officer Martinez to check David's location through the passenger tracking system. The system showed David's wristband in two places at once, Deck 5 and Deck 12. A few minutes later, at 12:47 a.m., Carlos went down to Deck 7 and saw David again, leaning on the railing, taking pictures of the ocean. David claimed he had been there for the past hour, not on any other deck. Carlos contacted Security Chief Officer Patricia Williams, who reviewed the tracking data and cameras. They showed David on Decks 5, 7, and 12 at the same times. At 1:15 a.m., they saw him on Deck 9 near the helicopter pad. While Williams spoke to him there, another officer on Deck 4 reported seeing David walking by, wearing the same clothes and talking to crew. Cameras confirmed he was on both decks at the same time. Chief Technical Officer Robert Chen checked the tracking logs and found that David's wristband had been registering in multiple areas of the ship at the same time since the first day of the cruise. It showed him in different places: dining rooms, the casino, pool deck, and his cabin, at identical timestamps, even overnight, without rest. At 2:30 a.m., a crew member knocked on his cabin door. David answered right away, saying he had been sleeping for 3 hours, but the cameras showed him walking outside during the time. His cabin's door lock showed no activity since 11:30 p.m. Corporate security investigators boarded the ship by helicopter the next day, collected all tracking and camera data, and made the crew sign strict confidentiality agreements. David left the ship in Miami on August 15th, with no sign he knew about the investigation. His spending, dining, and cabin records looked normal. But the tracking data was the clearest proof of impossible passenger movements ever recorded on a Royal Caribbean ship. 2 weeks later, Carlos heard from other workers on 3 different Royal Caribbean ships who had seen the same thing: passengers appearing on multiple decks at once, all during late-night hours. Carlos moved to indoor duties and avoids outdoor promenades at night. Still, when he checked security cameras during quiet shifts, He sometimes sees passengers walking in more than one place at the same time. This story was confirmed through Royal Caribbean Freedom of the Seas records, passenger tracking data, and corporate security investigation files about David Coleman's movements from August 12th to 15th, 2024. Carlos Rodriguez still works for Royal Caribbean, but has never spoken publicly about it until now. Let's move to our Story 66 story, and this one will make you question every guest services call you've ever received or made aboard a cruise ship. Our sixth story takes place on the Carnival Horizon during a 7-day Western Caribbean cruise from Miami to Cozumel, where an experienced guest services worker named Rachel Kim came across a series of calls that communication experts and maritime security investigators are still unable to fully explain. Rachel Kim had worked in cruise ship guest services for 8 years, handling passenger complaints, coordinating emergency responses, and making sure communication systems ran smoothly on Norwegian, Celebrity, and Carnival ships. She had certifications in conflict resolution, emergency communications, and crisis management, taking over 12,000 calls from passengers each year. But what she found through the ship's cabin phone system during what should have been simple guest requests changed everything she thought she knew about passenger calls, ship technology, and who might really be on the other end of the line asking for help. This event was confirmed through Carnival Cruise Line employment records, ship communication logs, FBI maritime reports, and Coast Guard missing persons files. Rachel Kim begins her story. I'm a 25-year-old guest services representative from Los Angeles, California, and I've been working in cruise ship communication centers for 8 years. I have training in conflict resolution, emergency communications, and hospitality crisis management. I take care of everything from small dining requests to coordinating major medical emergencies. In 8 years, I believed I had heard every kind of passenger call until I got the calls from cabin 6483 during our January trip. It was January 14th, 2025, during our 7-day route from Miami to Cozumel in Jamaica. The Hartley family from Denver, Colorado, had booked cabin 6483, an inside stateroom on deck 6. This included Robert Hartley, age 52, his wife Susan, age 49, and their daughter Madison, age 16. Our records showed they were celebrating Madison's 16th birthday and had requested late dinner seating and teen club access for her. The Carnival Horizon's guest services desk runs 24/7 using a digital phone system that connects all 2,124 cabins to our main communication hub. The system automatically logs every call with the cabin number, time, duration, and a service code. On average, each guest services worker answers between 40 and 60 calls per shift, from small problems to complex situations that require several departments. The first call from cabin 6483 came in at 11:47 p.m. on January 14th. It was a noise complaint about loud music from the cabin next door. Susan Hartley's voice was polite but serious, asking that security check it so they could get some sleep before their port day in Cozumel. I sent Officer Martinez to check, but he found that cabin 6485 had a quiet older couple who had been asleep since 10:30 p.m. There was no music, no noise, and nothing matching the complaint. This same pattern happened for the next 3 days. Cabin 6483 called 4 to 6 times each day with problems. Air conditioning not working, bathroom plumbing issues, missing towels, bad TV reception, and wrong room service deliveries. Every time Susan's voice sounded the same, calm but clearly upset. But every maintenance worker, cleaner, or service person I sent said the same thing. The door was locked, No one answered, and nothing seemed wrong. On January 16th, I decided to go myself. During another call from Susan about a bad smell coming from the air conditioning, I left my desk and went to deck 6. The call was still live in my headset as I knocked on the door. I could hear her voice talking about the smell, but there was no sound coming from inside the room. When I used my master key card, the system showed the cabin had been empty for more than 48 hours. I went straight to our guest services manager, David Chen, who had been in cruise communications for 12 years. When I told him, he checked the call records for 6483 and found something shocking. The phone logs showed 6 to 8 calls every day since we left port, but our passenger system showed that the Hartley family had never even boarded the ship. Their bags were still in unclaimed storage, their key cards had never been used, and port security confirmed they never finished check-in. David called ship security to figure out how calls could come from an empty cabin with a phone that wasn't even connected. Security Chief Patricia Williams, with 15 years in ship communication security, joined in. She discovered that the phone line for cabin 6483 had been turned off and removed from the active system 3 days earlier because the guests never showed up. But our call logs proved calls were still coming from that cabin during that time. Carnival's technical support on land was contacted through satellite link to investigate the strange phone activity. They found that the calls were going through our ship's phone network, but were not actually coming from the ship's internal system. Instead, the calls seemed to be coming from outside the ship, but showing as if they were from cabin 6483. The situation became more serious when Chief Williams contacted Port Miami to confirm the Hartley's boarding status. The port's records showed they had tried to board on January 12th, but were turned away because Madison's passport had expired. They were told to fix the problem for a future cruise. Yet somehow, someone calling herself Susan Hartley had been phoning from their cabin for 4 days, even though the family never boarded. The deeper investigation revealed something far worse. A voice analysis of the calls proved it was a real person speaking, but the background noise didn't match a cruise ship. Instead, there were sounds of traffic, city noises, and atmospheric readings suggesting the calls were coming from land, specifically from the Denver, Colorado area where the Hartleys lived. On January 17th, Chief Williams called the Denver police to check on the family. The police found Robert, Susan, and Madison Hartley dead in their home on January 11th, 3 days before our cruise left, and 1 day before their planned boarding. They had died from carbon monoxide poisoning due to a faulty heating system and were found when neighbors noticed mail piling up. But somehow Susan Hartley had been calling the ship daily since January 14th to complain about problems in a cabin she never entered, on a ship she never boarded. Our call records showed 23 calls from her after her death, the last just hours before we got the police report. Carnival's corporate security flew in investigators by helicopter while we were near Jamaica. They took all the equipment connected to cabin 6483, all call logs and all recordings, and had us sign strict confidentiality agreements. The official report called it a phone system malfunction that caused false routing and strange audio. The cabin stayed locked for the rest of the trip, its phone removed, and was marked for maintenance only. The communications system was updated with new security rules to block outside access. But 3 months later, I got a call from a guest services worker on Royal Caribbean's Harmony of the Seas. She told me she was getting the same kind of calls from empty cabins, from people who had died before their cruise, with voice matches and strange phone system problems no one could explain. When she played me one of the recordings, I froze. It was Susan Hartley's voice again, complaining about the same issues as before, but from another ship. After that, I asked to be moved to a shore-based job. I don't handle ship phone calls anymore, and I avoid night shifts when most of these unexplained calls seem to happen. But sometimes while working on land, I still get written guest complaints about noise or air conditioning problems. Complaints that match exactly what Susan Hartley used to say. And handwriting experts have confirmed some were written by people who had died months or years before their trip. Other cruise lines have reported similar cases, calls from dead passengers, voices of missing people, and phone breaches that break every telecom rule. The industry has spent millions on lawyers and tech upgrades to fix it, but the calls keep happening on ships in the Caribbean and Mediterranean. This account has been confirmed with Carnival Horizon employment records, ship phone logs, Denver police death records for the Hartley family, and technical reports about unauthorized access to our ship's phone network. Rachel Kim still works for Carnival Cruise Line, but has never shared this story publicly until now. Let's move to our The next morning the ship docked in Puerto Rico. The security team searched the entire ship, every room, every hallway, nothing. Drew, or whoever he really was gone, vanished. His room was totally empty. No clothes, no suitcase, no notebook. Just an empty mug on the table out on the balcony and a towel folded on the bed, like he had done the turn-down service himself. It was like he never existed, but he wore my name, my badge, my uniform. He walked around acting like me, and for a while, he got away with it. After that, nothing really felt normal again. I finished that cruise contract, but I stayed away from people more than usual. I didn't trust anyone, not even myself. I kept going over every talk I had with him, trying to find clues, trying to remember if he said anything strange, anything that should have warned me. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized he didn't just talk to me, he studied me. The way I stood, the way I talked, my routine. No one had ever paid that much attention to me before, and honestly, it made my stomach turn. A few weeks after I got back to Florida, I got a letter from the DMV. It said my license was suspended because of a DUI in Oregon. I've never even been to Oregon. I thought it was a scam until I called. They gave me my full name, birth date, and social security number. My whole body went cold. I hung up and called the sheriff's office in that county. They confirmed someone had been arrested using my name. The mugshot was grainy and taken in bad lighting, but it looked a lot like Drew, or whoever he was. I spent the next few months with a lawyer trying to fix everything. The identity theft messed up my taxes, my credit, and even my job clearance. I had to carry notarized letters just to prove who I was. But the worst part wasn't the paperwork. It was the fact that someone lived as me, like he wore my life like a costume. Then he disappeared without a trace. No reason, no trail, no answers. Just gone, like a ghost. I still work on cruise ships now and then. I change companies every few contracts. I keep my badge hidden under my shirt, and I check my locker 3 times before every shift. But sometimes late at night, when I'm staring out at the ocean, I wonder if he's still out there, on another ship watching someone else, stealing a new name, a new face. And I wonder if I was just one stop for him, just another uniform to borrow. I haven't seen him again, but I don't think it's over. My wife Brooke and I had been married for only 9 days when we got on the cruise. Just a short trip, 5 nights in the Eastern Caribbean. We booked it last minute with a honeymoon gift card. At the time, we lived in a tiny one-bedroom apartment in Tampa, busy with work and wedding planning. So a few days with no cooking, no emails, just the sea breeze sounded amazing. We got a decent room with a balcony on deck 7, starboard side. Nothing fancy, but it felt like a vacation from real life. Our neighbors were quiet, or so we thought. The first night, we met the guy in the cabin next to us. He was already outside when we got there, leaning on the railing, drink in hand, wearing a beige windbreaker zipped to his chin. Said his name was Richard, but everyone calls me Rick. He seemed nice enough, probably in his late 60s, a bit hunched, watery blue eyes and a weird smile that didn't quite match his face. I remember he kept calling Brooke young lady, even after she told him her name. We figured it was just harmless old man talk. He told us he'd been on lots of cruises before and gave tips about what to skip at the buffet. It felt like small talk, but I had the feeling he wanted to stay and chat longer than most people would. That night around 1 a.m., I woke up to footsteps, not above or below, but right next to us through the wall. A pattern, 5 or 6 steps, then stop, then again. At first, I thought Rick couldn't sleep, but it went on for over an hour. Then there was tapping, soft but steady, like someone was using a fingernail on the wall, or maybe on the metal vent between our rooms. Brooke was awake too, staring at the ceiling. She whispered, "Do you hear that too?" We didn't say much after that. The sound eventually stopped. We both fell asleep with the balcony door open a little for air. The next morning we saw Rick again. He was out early, reading a paperback in a deck chair just outside his cabin. He said good morning and asked if we tried the French toast at breakfast. Brooke smiled and said yes. I noticed his door behind him was slightly open. Not wide, just barely cracked. Cruise doors lock automatically unless something is blocking them. I thought it was weird, but didn't mention it. Later that day, we played trivia, had lunch, walked around. But that night, the noises started again. Earlier this time, around 11:30 p.m. We'd just gotten back from walking the promenade when we heard it. The same pacing, but quicker, louder, then tapping again, then something new. Whispers, not clear words, just a low, breathy voice like someone was talking through the wall. Brooke sat up and stared at the vent. I got up and put my ear to it. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but it was definitely a voice. I knocked, once, hard enough to be heard. Everything stopped. No more pacing, no more sound. The next morning we told a crew member, Malik, who worked on our floor. He gave us a sympathetic look and said, "Cabin walls are thin. Might just be snoring or a TV." But he wrote something on his clipboard and said he'd check in later. That afternoon, Brooke stopped in the hallway. On the railing between our room and Rick's was a pair of her underwear, a specific set, black and pink, that she packed but hadn't worn. It was folded too neatly, like someone took time to crease it. We both stared at Rick's door, closed, silent. We barely slept that night. Brooke made me leave the lights on. I pushed the chair under the doorknob, like it would help. Around 3 a.m., I heard the faintest sound of the handle moving, not turning, just a light click like someone testing it. I got up, but everything went quiet again. We didn't open the door, just sat there staring at it, waiting. In the morning, Rick was gone. Not at breakfast, not in the hallway. His door stayed shut. We figured maybe he went on a shore trip or was just avoiding people. But that night after dinner, we went back to our room and something felt wrong. The cruise app showed 4 entries into our room while we were gone, but Brooke and I both had our cards with us. No one else should have been in there. Inside, nothing was obviously missing, but our bags were different. Her suitcase was half unzipped. My shaving kit was on the bed. Every zipper on every bag had been open. We called guest services. Carla from the desk showed up with a security officer about 15 minutes later. We explained everything. The sounds, the underwear, the keycard logs. Carla looked worried. The officer scanned the door and confirmed the key entries, only from our cards and one other, Rick's. But here's the part that made our stomachs drop. Rick's room wasn't even supposed to be booked. The cruise system said cabin 7147 was empty from the start of the trip. I showed them a picture on my phone. Brooke had taken it earlier on the trip, just a selfie of us on our balcony. In the corner, you can see Rick's arm resting on the railing next door. That was proof. He was real. Security took it seriously then. They unlocked the cabin next to us. We watched from the hallway. It was spotless, bed made, nothing inside. But there was a smell, sharp like old cologne. Taped behind the bathroom mirror, they found a folded napkin with numbers on it and one word: observation. Security didn't tell us much after that, just that they'd look at footage and take it higher up. They moved us to a different room that night, 2 decks down. We didn't really enjoy the rest of the cruise. Brooke was quiet. She kept checking her luggage like something new might appear. I locked everything. We never saw Rick again. No one matching him ever turned up. We asked Malik, showed him a photo. He just said, "I haven't seen that man before." We still don't know who he was, or how he got into a room that wasn't supposed to be used. We changed all our passwords, threw out half our clothes just in case, reported it to the cruise company. They sent a generic apology and gave us 15% off a future cruise, which we never used. Brooke still checks every lock 3 times when we stay anywhere. As for me, I can't walk down a quiet, carpeted hallway under soft yellow lights without thinking of Rick's half-open door and wondering if he was ever really meant to be there at all. When we booked the cruise, it felt like a reward. Just me and my best friend Vanessa, 7 days in the Caribbean. No parents, no professors, no emails, just sunshine, drinks, and dumb fun. We just graduated from Arizona State, and that June felt like our first breath after 4 long years. Vanessa was always the social one, loud and full of energy. I was more careful. I'd never even been on a cruise, never left the mainland. So when we boarded the ship in Fort Lauderdale, I was buzzing from more than just the champagne we had in the elevator. Our room was tiny but cute, 2 single beds, a little desk, and a mirrored closet door that made everything look like a maze. We kept bumping into each other getting dressed and laughed every time. The first night went as you'd guess. Too many drinks, loud music, perfume everywhere. We came back after midnight tipsy. I remember Vanessa locking the door. Deadbolt, handle, everything. I saw her do it. We always made sure, especially since the hallways felt too quiet at night. The second night, I woke up freezing. Not just cold, but bone cold. My teeth clenched. I sat up and saw the door was open, just slightly. Hallway light was spilling in. I froze. I thought maybe Vanessa left and didn't close it right, but she was in her bed, asleep. I got up, closed it, locked it again, and stood there for a second feeling sick. Next morning I told her. She blinked at me while putting on mascara and said, "Girl, you probably forgot to lock it." But I knew I hadn't. I hadn't even had that much to drink. Still, I let it go. It's easy to doubt yourself in new places. But things kept happening. A bracelet I packed was gone. My lipstick disappeared. Vanessa laughed it off. "You probably left it in the bathroom by the pool." But I knew I hadn't. I took photos of my stuff before bed, just to be sure. Didn't tell her. She thought I was overthinking. That night I took a picture of the vanity, zipped up my purse, locked the door myself, and even put one of my sneakers in front of the door. Not enough to block it, just enough to notice if it moved. We went to movie night and came back late. Everything looked fine, but the sneaker had moved a few inches. I didn't sleep. Every sound felt sharp. Around 2 a.m., I woke up again. The air felt heavy. Vanessa snored softly. I stayed still, listening. Then I heard it. A faint click. The doorknob turned. Slowly. Not like someone unsure. Like someone who knew what they were doing. I barely breathed. But the door never opened. Just the turn. Then nothing. I waited forever. Then got up. The door was locked again. But the sneaker. It was across the room. Next morning, I told Vanessa everything. The handle, the sneaker, the missing stuff. Her face went pale. She admitted her headphones were missing, but didn't want to worry me. We went to guest services. Told them we thought someone had a copy of our key card. The woman behind the desk kept smiling, but her eyes looked scared. She said she'd report it and gave us a new room. Same size, 2 decks up. We packed fast. I barely slept again, but nothing happened. The next morning, we went back to get Vanessa's stuff from the closet. The cleaning staff was already inside. I walked in first. On the pillow of my old bed was my missing bracelet, curled neatly like it had never been gone. I didn't touch it. I just stood there staring because I knew that bracelet had been missing for days. Vanessa walked in behind me and froze too. She didn't say a word, didn't have to. The whole room looked untouched, like no one had stepped inside since we left. But that bracelet, it wasn't just lying there like it had fallen or been forgotten. It was placed there on purpose, perfectly centered on the pillow. It felt like someone was saying, "I was here. I'm still here." I asked the cleaning lady if she'd found it while tidying. She shook her head and said she hadn't even started that bed yet. Later in the day, I got a call from a security guy. He said they looked at the digital key card logs for our old cabin. He sounded unsure, told me there were no entries between midnight and 7 a.m. on any of the nights we stayed there. Only ours. No staff entries, no master keys, nothing at all. I asked if it could have been a glitch, or maybe someone bypassed the system. He went quiet for a second, then said, "That's not supposed to be possible, ma'am." He thanked me for reporting it and said someone from management would be in touch. No one ever did. After that, Vanessa and I barely spoke for the rest of the cruise. We stuck to crowded parts of the ship during the day and avoided being alone in the cabin. Every night we locked our new room tight, double-checked every time. Nothing else strange happened after that. No missing items, no odd sounds, no signs of someone being in the room. But something between us had shifted. It's like we both knew something unexplainable had happened, and we were trying to handle it in totally different ways. She became more jumpy, on edge. I just got quiet. Before the trip, we used to joke about this cruise being our last big adventure before settling into real adult life. I didn't think it would feel so real. When we got back to Arizona, I packed away all the clothes I'd worn on that trip and haven't touched them since. I haven't seen Vanessa in months either. We still text sometimes, but there's distance now. And that bracelet, I didn't take it with me. I left it there on the pillow, exactly where we found it when we left the ship. I don't know if someone had copied our key card somehow, or if maybe someone had never actually left that room in the first place. But I do know one thing. That cabin door was always locked from the inside, every single time. I'm James, 36, and this happened around 7 months ago on a cruise I took with my younger sister, Nicole. She'd just finished a tough divorce, 7 years with a guy who slowly pulled her away from friends and family. I thought a vacation might help her feel more like herself again. I paid for most of it and booked a side-by-side balcony cabins on a mid-range cruise ship leaving from Galveston. I'd never been on a cruise before, and honestly, I was way more excited than I expected. My job's all meetings and stress, so this felt like my first real break in years. The ship had that weird hotel corporate vibe. always super clean and bright in the mornings. The carpet was some synthetic floral pattern that zapped me with static every time I walked across it in socks. The first few days went smoothly. Nicole seemed happier, laughing more, letting her hair down, chatting with random people at the buffet. We'd each do our own thing during the day, then meet up in the evenings to have drinks and talk while leaning over our balcony rails. Our cabins were separate, but so close we could hear each other if we leaned out a bit. We'd watch the ocean slide by and point out faraway cargo ships like kids again. Something about the rhythm of the waves, the moonlight on the water, it all felt calming, like the ship wanted you to forget the rest of the world existed. But on the fourth night, just past 3 a.m., I woke up to loud, urgent knocking on my door. Before I even looked through the peephole, I knew it was Nicole. She was knocking like she needed to warn me, not just come in. She was barefoot, shaking, her big sleep shirt twisted around her. She didn't wait for me to ask anything, just walked past me and said, "Someone was on my balcony." She looked pale like she hadn't been breathing. I tried to stay calm and asked if she was sure. She nodded, said she'd woken up and saw a man just standing outside the glass door, not knocking, not trying to get in, just watching. I stood there trying to make sense of it. Maybe a drunk guest wandered onto the wrong balcony. Maybe she imagined it. She hadn't been sleeping great and mentioned that the ship's constant motion was throwing her off, but she insisted. "His shoes made that scuffing sound," she said, "like when rubber soles drag on outdoor tile." I walked back with her, heart pounding. Her balcony was empty, no signs anyone had forced their way in. The glass door was locked from the inside. I remember how loud the engine noise felt in that silence, like white noise you couldn't turn off. I told her to sleep in my room that night. It wasn't comfortable. Cruise beds aren't made for two tossing adults. But she didn't argue. The next morning, I stopped by guest services to ask if the balconies had security cameras. Turns out only the hallways and shared spaces do. None pointed at individual balconies. The guy behind the counter didn't seem worried. "Probably just someone having a little too much fun," he said, like Nicole hadn't been terrified. The way he brushed it off really bugged me, but I let it go. I didn't want Nicole to think she was overreacting, even though I was starting to believe she wasn't.